All right. So can we really save the planet and, make money at the same time? That's what we're diving into today, right?
Yeah.
Biodiversity investing.
Yeah.
How our money choices can actually help protect all the amazing life on Earth.
Mm.
And before you think this is just, about saving the whales or something, this is
Mm.
so much bigger. This is about like a stable future for all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, right? Because people forget how connected our economies are to, a healthy planet.
Totally.
So to ignore that connection, it's not even just, irresponsible. It's just bad business.
Yeah, it's just common sense, right?
Right.
So let's break this down. We've got some really interesting reports to dig into. We've got Morgan Stanley, the PRI, it's the Principles for Responsible Investing,
Right.
and even the latest from the Task Force on Nutrient-Related Financial Disclosures.
Yes. The TNFD.
That's it.
They had a big release in September.
They did, September 2023.
Yep.
Big stuff.
Yeah, and it really, I think, shook things up, because they're finally giving companies a roadmap to be transparent about their impact on nature. And the global support for this it's pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, it feels like it's becoming like the standard, which is exciting.
It is.
So it seems like people are finally realizing that like a healthy planet equals a healthy portfolio.
Right.
But before we get too far, can we back up for a sec? Why does biodiversity even matter? Like, why should we care about this?
Well, I mean, it's easy to think about biodiversity as just, different plants and animals.
Sure.
But it's really it's like the web of life
Right.
that keeps our planet working. So, clean air,
Yeah.
clean water, the food we eat. Biodiversity is like the foundation of it all.
We're losing it like crazy fast, right? Like faster than any other time in human history.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, when you pull a thread on a sweater
Oh, yeah.
and it just keeps
It all falls apart.
the whole thing can unravel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not some future threat. It's happening right now. And it impacts all of us. The stability of food prices, new diseases popping up, even like the places we love to visit.
Right.
These are all directly affected by, a decline in biodiversity.
Okay, so this is hitting home for everybody listening. But how does this all tie back to, investing?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. So Morgan Stanley, in their May 2023 report,
Okay.
they brought this idea of what they call tracing controversial commodities to the table.
Tracing controversial commodities. Okay, break that down for us.
Yeah, so it's basically like really understanding where the products we buy and invest in, where they really come from, those cool new shoes that you love.
Yeah.
Are they contributing to deforestation? Or that coffee you had this morning? Is it harming like endangered species?
Right.
It's about making those connections.
So like shining a light on the whole supply chain, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. And what Morgan Stanley really highlighted was that, if you ignore those connections, it's a huge risk for investors.
Yeah.
For example, palm oil. I mean, illegal deforestation for palm oil is one of the biggest drivers of biodiversity loss.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Not to mention a huge contributor to climate change.
Right, because cutting down forests not only destroys like animal homes and stuff,
Yeah.
but it releases all that stored carbon
Exactly.
into the atmosphere.
See, those two things are so interconnected.
Totally.
And so when you have all these investors pouring money into these companies that are, doing these practices, it's not just unethical.
Yeah.
It's a bad financial decision long term.
So how do we like untangle this whole mess and actually
Yeah.
start making, better choices?
Right.
And that brings us back to the TNFD and their framework, right?
Yeah, because the TNFD, they're trying to do for nature what that other group, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, they did for climate change.
Right.
Make it impossible to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
They want companies to really come clean about how their operations depend on nature,
Okay.
but also, most importantly, how they impact it. In good ways and bad.
So no more sweeping all the environmental impacts under the rug.
Exactly. This is about radical transparency.
Radical transparency. Love it. But, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes these frameworks get a little,
Technical.
yeah, a little over my head. So can we break down like the key TNFD recommendations, like the need to know stuff for our listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah. The big thing is they want companies to really look at and disclose like the financial risks and opportunities that are tied to nature.
Okay.
So, if your company relies on a water source that's being, depleted because of bad practices,
Right.
that's a huge financial risk and you gotta acknowledge it, right?
So it's about connecting the environmental impact with the bottom line. Like they're not separate things.
Exactly. Exactly. Protecting nature is, yeah, it's the ethical thing to do, but it's also smart business.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And the TNFD doesn't just stop at disclosing this stuff. It also encourages action, right? Like they want companies to actually, do more than just say, oh, we have an impact. They want them to avoid, reduce, even like regenerate nature.
Now we're talking, right? Like moving from just words to actually doing something.
Yes.
But are companies actually doing this? Like, are there any real-world examples of this TNFD framework, actually happening?
Yeah, for sure. We're seeing a ton of organizations embracing these principles.
Yeah.
The PRI, for example, the Principles for Responsible Investing.
Yeah.
They've been pushing sustainable investing for a while now, and they've really integrated the whole TNFD framework into their thing.
They're kind of a big deal in that world, right? The responsible investing world.
They are, yeah. And they're actually working with groups like the International Finance Corporation, the IFC, to turn those principles into actual investments. In fact, the IFC has this great biodiversity finance reference guide.
Oh, cool.
That has a bunch of examples of how to invest in ways that actually help and protect nature.
Okay, give us some concrete examples. What does that actually look like?
Well, sustainable forestry is a big one.
Okay.
So that's like managing forests in a way that, we can still get resources like timber.
Yeah.
But we're not just, wiping out entire forests to do it.
Right. No more clear cutting,
Exactly.
just destroying everything.
Exactly. We're also seeing a lot of investment in wetland restoration.
Oh, interesting.
Which is great because wetlands are amazing for biodiversity. They filter water, they're homes for tons of species.
Right.
They even fight climate change.
Huh.
So putting money into restoring them it's a win-win.
Yeah, I love that. Like investing in nature's own solutions.
Exactly.
Are there other unexpected areas where we're seeing these kinds of innovations?
You might be surprised to hear that even the shipping industry is getting involved.
Really?
Yeah, so they're putting money into biodiversity-friendly shipping technologies,
right?
Like treating ballast water, which helps stop the spread of invasive species.
That makes sense.
And quieter engines to reduce the noise pollution that can harm marine life.
Wow. That's really cool to see that kind of thinking across so many different industries.
No.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, but I think the big question for everybody listening is, so what? Why does biodiversity investing matter?
Because this link between biodiversity and finance, it's not just some niche thing anymore.
Yeah.
It matters for all of us. Where we put our money has this ripple effect.
Totally.
And it influences what companies do and ultimately the world we live in, right?
Big picture stuff.
It is. It's about building a future where both people and the planet can do well.
So it's not even just about the money, really. It's about making a difference.
Right.
It's about our values.
It's about aligning our values with. Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to a really, really important question. It's about what kind of future we're actually trying to build, right?
Yeah.
And how can our investments help make that happen?
Yeah, it feels like we're at this crossroads.
Right.
We can keep doing things the way we've always done them and just ignore the environmental cost.
Right.
Or we can actually choose a different way.
Exactly. And this isn't just on us as individuals anymore, right?
Right.
Big institutions, pension funds, governments.
Yeah.
They all have a huge role to play in shifting all that money towards, biodiversity positive stuff.
Right. It's got to be all of us.
It does.
We gotta demand more from the companies we invest in, right?
Yes.
Hold them accountable for what they're doing to the planet.
100%. And that kind of brings me to a final thought for everyone listening, right?
Okay.
So we talked about the TNFD and how it wants companies to be transparent, right? But how can we, as everyday people, how can we go beyond just our investment accounts? How can our choices, when we buy stuff, actually make a difference?
Oh, that's a good question. It's about, like you said, aligning our values with everything we do.
Yeah.
If we're demanding sustainability in our investments, shouldn't we be doing the same thing when we shop?
100%. It's about putting your money where your mouth is, right? Supporting those companies that are actually, walking the walk, because every dollar we spend, it sends a message.
It's a vote almost.
It is for the kind of world we want to live in. Choosing products that are, sustainable, ethically produced.
Right.
That's huge.
It all goes back to that interconnectedness, right?
Exactly.
Like our money, our everyday choices, it all adds up.
It all contributes to the big picture. If we want a future where both, people and nature are thriving, we got to be doing it on all fronts.
Totally. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we can't have one without the other, can we?
We can't. That's a future I'm willing to put my money on,
Yeah. Well said. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for digging in all this with me.
My pleasure.
I think everybody listening has a lot to think about, a lot to consider.
Yeah, lots to think about. And remember, the future's not set in stone. We get to create it.
We do.
Let's make it a biodiverse one.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll catch you all next time.